Okay, so here's an example of a patch that was completed. It was filled, but we forgot to sand it smooth. And as a result, once you finish the paint job, you can still see the defect or the repair of the defect. So it's important to keep track and finish the repair before you put a top coat of paint on. Okay, so this is an area that we had previously filled. And to finish up the repair of the defect, you can see that it shines, or what we call it flashes. When you repair the area, some of the excess drywall joint compound makes the area smooth and it reflects light differently. So you can use a sponge to clean off the excess drywall. You can also use a fine grit sandpaper to make sure that the only area that has the joint compound is the filled defect. In the event you have a large number of defects and you don't want to end up missing it, you can use a pencil and just lightly circle the defect. And then that way you can't miss it on the wall, and therefore it's going to get sanded smooth and ready for the next step. So here we have the large defect that we were working on earlier. Especially with the larger defects, some of the joint compound will evaporate, the water portion, and this still will not be level with the surrounding walls. And you can check it by seeing how your knife rests over the defect and the nearby walls. It shouldn't rock up or down, and it shouldn't rock left or right. If it does a little bit, that's fine, whatever tolerances you'd like. And you simply take more joint compound and simply fill it in using a nearby wall, these surfaces, to determine what is level. Now, especially in these larger defects, you're going to get some joint compound on the surrounding walls, which you can scrape off right away. That's fine. Or you can wait until it dries and you can use a sponge, a damp sponge, and wipe it smooth. Or you can use a high grit sandpaper, say 100 or higher, and then sand it to the level that you would like. One issue with the larger defects is that this joint compound will absorb paint differently than the painted surface around it. So if you just put paint over this, you will still see the residual of the defect. Now there's two products out there. One is called primer, and the other is a sealer. A primer is specifically designed to receive paint better as a top coat. Something for the paint to attach to, and that's about it. But the primer, just like the paint, will be absorbed in the joint compound differently than the surrounding wall. So even if you use primer and one top coat of paint, this is very likely still going to show up. So what you want to use for larger defects is something called a sealer. A sealer is going to bind to all the surfaces of the wall, the joint compound surface, the painted surface, evenly. And once the sealer is on place, whatever goes on top will be distributed the same way over all the surfaces that receive the sealer. So you don't want to prime this, you want to seal this. And a common sealer, you just go to the local hardware store and ask for drywall sealer. But you have to be specific because you don't want a primer, you want a sealer. And then you would paint the entire surface, the painted surface, the repaired surface with a sealer, and then you can use a primer. And then you can do a top coat. Now, one thing that you can do, especially if you have many, many small defects, to make sure you don't miss them, is if you had a small defect that you repaired, just circle it lightly with a pencil. And then that way, when you're ready for the next step, you won't miss any of them because they're very easy to recognize.